Well, before we leave the jazz genre, I want to play a more recent track you did. Back in the late 90s, I was listening to a lot of big band recordings along the lines of Glenn Miller and Duke Ellington orchestras, and I came up with this concept that I called golden guitars. And I imagined doing an album of 1940s material in which the piano, bass, drums, and vocals stayed true to the original vintage style, but all the horn parts were replaced with an electric guitar ensemble. I called it golden guitars because I imagined all the guitars having gold finishes that were reminiscent of the brass instruments that they were replacing, and would sort of unite all the guitar players visually. I mean, I had a set list all picked out, and I was trying to imagine what this hybrid orchestra might sound like. Well, thanks to you, now I have a pretty good idea what it would sound like. And in 2009, you released a version of Day In, Day Out, in which you basically did what I just described. You kept the piano, bass, drums, vocals, etc. vintage, and you dropped in the wire choir to cover the horn parts. So my question to you is this: how did you manage to steal my great idea?
I wanted to do an experiment. I was watching Frank Sinatra 1960-something TV special, and it opened with Day In and Day Out. And I'd heard the song before, but didn't have a great recollection of it, and I loved Nelson Riddle arrangements. Nelson Riddle was so perfect for Sinatra. The parts were just simple, understated, the right notes. It's just classic, the way that stuff works together. And I'm thinking, I'm going to write that out and try to play it. I'm going to take what plays on guitar, and I'm going to play that arrangement with guitars that have some buzzsaw sound, but a clean sound too. I used 2 amps, two actually Tone Labs, Vox Tone Labs, the very first ones they made, and dialed in so I could get some sustain but still get body with a non-distorted sound. And I wanted to see how this is going to work. So I programmed, wrote a chart out for myself. I played all the instruments, the drums, bass, piano, and the L5 for real. That L5, by the way, I love that guitar. It's a 1932 L5 I have. And then I put on all the guitars, and it was an experiment. Did the experiment work? It's okay.
It swings, man. It swings.
Well, I'm glad you dig it. I was talking to Dean Parks about this. I want to get like a brass swell thing going. But, with a volume pedal, you kind of can do it, but then it sounds like a guitar with a volume pedal. I just said, whatever. I'm just going to play it full out. Another thing Dean says is try a Mutron thing. I had thought about that, but then it's going to start to sound like a synthesizer. Anyway, what it ended up being is what it ended up being, and it was an experiment, and that's that.
Well, let's mention Sherwood Ball, who did the Sinatra-esque vocal. The lead vocals reminds me of Sinatra and actually Bobby Darin. But interestingly, he also sounds quite a bit like Sting to me.
Sherwood is a great singer.
Particularly in the early part of the song. Let's go ahead and spin that so the listeners will know what we're talking about.
Same old voodoo follows me about. Same old pounding in my heart whenever I think of you. And baby, I think of you day in and day out. Day out, day in. I needn't tell you how my days begin. When I awake, I get up with a tingle. One possibility in few, that possibility of maybe seeing you. Come rain, or come shine, I meet you and in me the day is fine. Then I kiss your lips and the pounding becomes an ocean roar, a gang of drums. Can't you see it's love? Can there be any doubt? Oh, when there it is, day in, day out. Yeah! Come rain, come shine, I meet you and me the day is fine. And I grab your lips and the pounding becomes a very large ocean roar, about 900 drums. Can't you see it's love? Can there be any doubt? When there it is, and here it is, oh, there it is, day in, day out, oh, day out, woo.
Well, I know you must remember the TV show To Tell the Truth. And
I remember it.
yeah, well, with all due respect to the things you've done, like Peg and your Dick Dale and Joe Pass impersonations, when I think of that moment on the show when they say, "Will the real Jay Graydon please stand up?" I'm always going to be thinking about Jar.
I got to tell you something, man. That's a work of love.
Yeah, it comes through. Well, in 2008, you and your collaborator Randy Goodrum released an album called Scene 29 as Jar, which simply stands for Jay and Randy. At the start of the podcast, we played a little bit of the opening track from Scene 29, a song called Cure Kit. I'm going to play something else from it in a moment, but first I got to tell you this is one of my all-time favorite albums. I could have easily done an entire podcast just about this album alone. And before we start running down some of the individual tracks, why don't you tell us what led you and Randy to pursue doing this album together?
I had a song start. It was the song Nothing But a Heartache or Heartache, something like that.
Your Heartbreak?
Right, and that was the dummy lyric I used. I had a song start for that. I had the chorus. And Randy was Randy's a very prolific writer, and he keeps in contact with everybody, and he's constantly writing all the time with anybody that he can work with that has an outlet to stuff. He's a professional songwriter. That's what I'd call Randy. And by the way, he is an excellent piano player. He's a closet jazzer, that's for sure. He can play anything. So in any case, we write the tune, and he comes up with the verse, and whatever else we did to tweak it. You know, Randy's a great lyricist too, a very bright guy, and you can hear his intelligence in all these lyrics. They're twisty and turny. He knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he keeps it simple when he needs to for commercial stuff, and then this got a little bit more out. And Randy said, you know, maybe we should do an album with these kind of songs. And I'm thinking, well, if we do this, we should even get a little bit more out. You know, this is as commercial as it was going to get.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, let's do it, man. It's all this stuff was so much fun to do. And working on the Jar album now, you know, that I've been working on for a while again with Rand, it's just great stuff. It's a beauty, man, in music. I humbly state it's gorgeous stuff. And I humbly state my guitar solos are good. I usually hate my stuff. Shortly after I play it, I go, no, why don't you practice, man? You know? And the funny thing is, I don't play that much unless I have a reason. But on all those songs, for some reason or other, those solos are pretty damn good.
This is what I meant with my analogy, To Tell the Truth. If you're going to do the Peg solo or something from the Surf Tones, if you grab something off Jar, I go, there he is, the real Jay Graydon.
I got to say, you're right.
Well, let's give people a sample of this. I'm going to play a track called Call Donovan, which does have a pretty phenomenal guitar solo by you. And one of the things I like about this, and the reason I picked this one, is I like the creative transition from the guitar solo back into the song. But let's play it and let everybody dig some Jar.
Cool.
trash and knows the spin. Call Donovan. And when her shoulder gets cold, before you make the wrong move, call Donovan. He makes diamonds from coal. Just call Donovan. Spare it, he'll share it until she falls in line. She slams the door right in my face. I flip my phone and press star 8 and call Donovan. He tells me 3 magic words for tricky situations. Just call Donovan. Now I'm the one she prefers.
Well, earlier I mentioned you started your own record label, Sonic Thrust Records. Now, was that simply a desire for creative control, or was there other factors involved as well?
We're in an era where melodic music is not going to get a record deal. Period. End of story. So when I started Sonic Thrust, it was possible to manufacture CDs and sell them through CD Baby. I make licensing deals in other parts of the world. But, for the States and a lot of areas of the world where there's no licensing deals, this is what it is. So it was just to survive, to have the music survive, that's all.
So it was a reaction to the realities of the current conditions of the music industry.
This was even in the mid-'90s. Nobody's going to sign. Who wants another Steely Dan?
I do.
Well, Joe Regular doesn't.
No, I know.
I make records for musicians, sadly.
And that's who this podcast is for.
Not sadly, and I wish the audience was beyond it, but I look at, man, this is just the way it is. This is what I do.
Well, here's the flip side of that, though. You got a CD on Sonic Thrust called Past to Present, and in the old model, you wouldn't have been able to release something like that.
That's true.
And
it's all the demos from, early 70s through mid-70s, and that's a lot of fun, that CD.
Yeah, and you can market it online directly to the people who'd be interested in.
That's right.
And so let's tie that in. We played After the Love Is Gone, or Has Gone, earlier by Airplay. I took the track from Airplay for the Planet.
For the Planet.
What's the story on that album?
Well, I got a deal. That was based on a licensing deal out of Japan in 1993, and I decided, okay, I'm not going to sing in this. I suck as a singer in my book. So I got all great singers, wrote great songs with guys, and, it was basically as a release for Japan, but I had the rights for the rest of the world. It was a licensing deal. And, the album speaks for itself. I mean, musically, I feel commercial of the era as an adult contemporary kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it did well in Japan. It did good. It sold good.
Yeah, I
sold
recommend
well. Let's use correct English over here, man.
Well, in a minute when we get to the websites, people can see everything that's available on Sonic Thrust Records. It's all right there in a row.
Yep.
Planet 3 and which is another project. Why don't you tell me a little bit more details about that past to present? Because I know there's a combination of things on there, including commercial jingles, and it's something you did with Ted Knight.
Yeah, that was our manager at the time, Davidson, my manager, also managed Ted Knight, and it was he was doing a pilot for a TV show, and so we wrote the theme, and nothing ever happened with this. And of course, the genius of David Foster, man, the changes right off the bat with the melody, just so very cool, And I'm editing as usual and throwing in a melody here and there, and when Ted came over to do it, it was very funny.
Yeah.
And so it's just a collection of all kinds of stuff that would never ever have a way to be heard. And I had all the old tapes. I had the tapes baked. When I bought my Pro Tools rig, the first thing I did was to transfer all the tapes into Pro Tools.
Yeah.
So I still have some more stuff laying around, too, that I'll eventually get to.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and mention some websites to our listeners. The first would be jaygraydon.com, jaygraydon.com. There's also a jaygraydon.net with some sort of companion material. They're both terrific sites where you can get a variety of information about what Jay's up to now and has been up to in the past. Of course, you can also get that information about the releases, buy music there, CD Baby, iTunes, all the usual outlets. The third site is jarzone.com, which is dedicated to the Jar Project. Speaking of which, I know that you and Randy have been working on a follow-up to Scene 29. Any idea when that might come out?
Not sure at this point, but
okay.
I can tell you that I don't say anything yet.
Okay, well, we'll just leave it at that.
Right.
I saved a Jar track for us to exit on. This one has personal significance to me because one year I gave my employees GPS systems for Christmas presents. There's a song on Scene 29 called GPS in which a female voice of a GPS system starts the song by giving out simple driving directions and then gradually evolves into like a full-blown character saying things to the driver that a real GPS never would. Was that meant to be like a Twilight Zone kind of thing, or just the imaginings of a tired driver? Or do I have to ask Randy?
You'd have to ask Randy, but there's also a friend of mine also did a video of that's online.
Yep.
I think it's at the Jar Zone site. He did a great video.
Another reason to go to the websites, there are several videos there, including this one.
Right. This video is great. He's great with animating stuff. Great sax player, Don Roberts. Did it for fun for me. Anyway.
Yeah, so you can go to the websites, and of course, if you're on Facebook, you can find Jay there as well. Well, Jay, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Your work has been a real source of inspiration for myself and many of my listeners, so we thank you, and we're all looking forward to whatever you're going to do next.
Thank you, Dan. Glad to be a help, and I hope that this rap is informative on at least a level or two.
Well, it absolutely is, and when that next Jar album comes out, let's have you on again.
Sounds good.
This podcast was recorded in Phoenix, Arizona. It was engineered by Mike Post. Thanks again to Jay Graydon and his capable assistant, Kirsten. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the trip.
There's a voice behind the dial. Gotta get there or pay the cost. Exit 50 feet. half scared I might get lost. Till the break of light, it's a GPS kind of night. Next stop, Tucson, the long way round.
Watch for traffic lights.
Spent too long in La La Town.
Stop and rest a while.
Says the voice behind the dial. Head games from lack of sleep.
Share the pain with me.
My brain is playing tricks with me.
North on 95. It's a GPS kind of night. Days turn to night. Towns flying by. My satellite, I promise we'll get there.
Keep it running. I'll be right back.
Watch your step, be cool.
I'm gambling. He's got good cash.
Danger just ahead.
Say the voices in my head. Beat it. We're all done here.
South on 81.
We made it. We're in the clear.
Till the break of light. It's a GPS kind of night. You've arrived at your destination.
My Woody. My Woody. My Woody. Woody. My Woody.